This tutorial was brought to you thanks to the supporters on the screen. Check out TAPgiles.com to find more Dreams resources, donate to support my work, or engage my services to get private instruction or help on a project one-on-one. Next up is the hand/imp tracker. So the hand tracker is just like the head tracker, but it tracks the imp. So if I play and move over here and then pause, then it's at that position because it follows the actual imp. So as visibility, so let's make that same test. So this works the same as the head tracker. It's a special kind of group, but it follows the imp instead of the head or camera. So let's scope this into that group. So now when I'm playing, that stuff is stuck to the imp. And if you turn off visible, then that stuff will be invisible. Like that. Movable when not following, so let's do the same test there. Got the follow player's imp, just like the head has a similar input. So now when I hold X, then it's following, and I let go and it falls, and just like with the head, sculpts and things affect the collision and stuff. Cool, and if that's not on, then it will follow, but then when I let go it will just be stuck in place. And you can turn on hide imp to not show the imp while it's following the imp, but if I let go then it's not affecting the imp visibility at all, because this stuff only really does anything while it's following. With the hand trackers now, you can use the Gizmo Type options for previewing how the imp and orientation and stuff of them will work in different setups. So this is for non-VR, these two, so that's the wireless controller and the Move controller. And the Move controller kind of matches the Move controller itself, so they don't have an extra thing for that. But then in VR, they're actually different. So then the imp is a lot smaller, and it's kind of in the middle of the DS4. And then for the Move controllers, they're smaller and kind of angled like that. Whereas in here, they're kind of angled differently and whatnot. So that's something to be aware of, and they've added that in a recent patch, in the music patch, to help us out. It has controller assignment. By default it's on primary. You can see the tooltip here, primary. That means it will follow the DS4 controller as we saw before, or the imp, and it'll still collide with stuff as normal, but it'll follow the primary controller. If I set it to be left-handed, then this is the primary controller, so now it will follow that one instead. There's this setting though for flip for left-handed. So if I turn that off, let's just make this so that's pointing inward towards my body from the hand kind of thing. So now it's pointing left. If I change the handedness to left, it's still pointing left because we turned that setting off. But if I turn that setting on, now it's flipped the whole thing along this way, and now it's these extra bits are pointing to the right. But you can set it to be explicitly on the secondary controller, and now it's always going to be on the secondary one instead of the primary one. But that only does anything if you're using the moves. So if I use the DS4, it won't follow at all because this DS4 is the primary controller for the player. You can also say left hand and right hand. So if I set this to left hand, then it will always stick to the left hand, even if whether it's the primary or secondary or whatever. So now this object will be on the left hand, this one, like that. And even if I change the handedness to be left-handed, it doesn't matter because this is still the left hand. The second Move controller you connect, it will assume is the left hand basically. And the same for the right hand, it will stick to the right hand instead of the left. And then DS4, the wireless controller even, won't follow the moves at all. It will only follow when you're using the DS4. So you could have a different object that's following the imp if you're using the DS4, and then when you pick up the moves that disappears, and now it's going to have a different set of objects for the moves instead. And you can actually use this using motion controllers, which so I'll tie that to making the floor blue again. But that's only if this tracker is actually tied to the move. So if we set it to that, now we should be able to get that output. Okay, so I'm not using the moves right now, so it's not making the floor blue. Yeah, so when I pick up a move controller, then it just starts, it knows that I'm using the moves, but that only happens if it can actually follow that move controller. Follow imp behavior is for when this object is following the DS4 specifically. It's quite important where this arrow is pointing forwards, so I'll make like a visualization of that. So that's a sense of like where forward is for the imp tracker. So you can see the imp is kind of angling towards whatever direction the camera is pointing, and if I pause over here and look at it from above, you can see they're actually pointing exactly the same. The imp tracker is parallel to the angle of the camera. If we turn this onto gun style, then you can see it's always pointing away from the camera now. So now you can more easily kind of point at stuff to the side and things like that while using the DS4. And you can see it's pointing away from the camera position, which is actually kind of the middle of the back of the whole gadget. And it's pointing away from that. So that's more useful for like shooters if you're doing a gyro shooter or something. And this is more useful for stuff just stuck to the imp, I guess. We also have this distance from camera thing. So now it's that distance from the camera, way in front of it. So something to be aware of is the imp itself is actually the same distance from the camera as normal. The imp's distance is actually set by this. So if I make that shorter or change that focus distance, now the imp will be closer and larger, as you can see. But the imp tracker will be, from the camera's perspective, going forwards this distance amount. So this actually sets it relative to the camera view from the back. But if you set it to 0, it will just be wherever the imp is. So I set it to 0.1, now it will be 0.1 in front of this, which is a very tiny amount. So it's like really huge and in my face. And in fact, the imp seems to be behind it. It kind of appears to be behind it, because it's on this plane over here and the object is way in front of it, like that. So if we make a sculpt grabbable, it works just like it normally does with grabbable. The imp will kind of move to it like that, and you're kind of grabbing it, but the object you can see is actually moving away to the body of the imp, because that's the kind of tracker position it uses, as opposed to the point that you're grabbing. So if you turn on follow grabbed item, now it will go to that position and stay at wherever you're grabbing it from. And even if you make this movable, so you can actually grab it and move it around, then it will kind of stay on it as if you're grabbing it with that object. So again, remember that these things still collide with stuff and glitch out and stuff, so if you prefer, you can make it non-collidable, and that will just stick perfectly and not kind of mess with the physics of what's going on. We have these outputs like grabbed, we put that in there, and hovering something that is grabbable, put that in there. So when I'm hovering over this, then the middle one shows because I'm hovering over something that's grabbable. If I grab it, then the top one is glowing because that's that output. If I hover over something that's possessable, then the bottom one glows.
Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to get 5 hours of tutorials early for $3. Here's a preview of what you can learn if you choose to become a supporter.
you.